Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast where I speak with the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I'm super thrilled to be speaking with the fantastic Joanne Carlin. Jo is currently Group HR Director for Fresenius Kabi. She's had a wealth of experience working within the field of human resources, people and leadership across the entire board. She works in a number of non-executive positions and has previously worked for a number of household name organisations. Welcome to the show, Jo.
Well, thank you, Leila. Thank you for that very nice welcome as well.
It's great to have you here today with us, Jo, and thank you very much for kind of sharing with us, some of your perhaps more intimate stories around diversity and inclusion and belonging, and also around your career. But for those who perhaps don't know you already, I wonder, could you just give us a super quick potted nutshell of your career today and some of the key projects that you're working on at the moment with Fresenius?
Yeah, sure. Well, it'll have to be in a nutshell. My career goes back quite a long time. The grand sum of about 25 years, always in the field of HR people, because genuinely I love it. And working for a variety of organisations, some local, so some, based in the UK, some international and some global. So it depends really on, I guess, what jobs come up where, and actually the bigger the challenge, the better for me. Currently, I'm working for Fresenius Kabi across the UK and Ireland, and some of their challenges are no different to any other businesses' challenges, actually. And it's about how do they get strength in their people function, and how do they focus on the areas that they need to focus on. And employee engagement, employee turnover, all of that is a really big topic for Fresenius, for sure.
Fantastic. And I know that you've worked across many different sectors, and like you've just said there, actually it doesn't matter really which business you're working for. A lot of the issues are often quite the same. Working for household brands like Pirelli that I know you work for, through to through to Daniel Thwaites. Actually, the core of it is still around people. Did you always want to work within the people function? From, I don't know, when you first started your career, the young Jo kind of embarking on the career ladder, thinking, where am I going to go and what am I going to do? Did you always want to work within the people function? Were you drawn to this area? Because you always strike me so much as so much of a people person, so much energy every time I speak with you, that I almost think you were born to do this job. But I don't know, was it always that way?
No, I absolutely fell into it.
Really?
Yeah, I totally. I actually started my life in an accountancy function, in a finance function. I started with numbers, not people, and quickly realised that actually I wasn't that keen on just numbers. Made the switch, fell into it. There was a kind of job going, and I fell into it, and absolutely loved it. Because I think where else can you work? In what other function can you work where you get to see all of the other functions and you get to impact the business in such a complete way? And I kind of sit there thinking, I racked my brain, and I thought, well, actually, I don't know if there's anywhere else that could have done that. I've had opportunity to move outside of the HR function over the years and actually never pursued it. Always said, no, thank you. I'm quite happy to stay where I am. I think it's a fascinating function. And it's one where, at a point where you can work at a senior level, at least, well, in fact, it doesn't matter what level you're at, but at the point where I could work at a senior level, which was my first position in senior level, was John West. So great brand, great business. Actually started to understand, okay, I see it now. I see the impact that you can have in this kind of position, in this kind of function. And I was completely hooked after that. That was it. So yeah, if I had any doubts prior to that, certainly after that, I did not.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. So from accountancy through to people, and that was it. Once you found your love of the people function, it just continued onwards and upwards, and the career path just continued to grow into larger and larger organizations. And like you said before, you know, you're a girl that likes a challenge, so into those ever more challenging environments, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I learned that the kind of environments that suit me are the ones which are really challenging. I think, you know, there's definitely a place for people who want a more stable kind of culture or more stable working environment. I'm just not one of them. I think there's something quite empowering about sitting there and saying, you know what, it's okay to be different. It's okay to want stability in the traditional sense. Stability for me comes through change, and I know that seems quite an odd concept, but the more change, or the more impactful the change, not change for change's sake, the better, the more comfortable I am in that setting. And then certainly for me and the teams that I've led over the years, that's certainly true for them as well. And I think that you can have quite a nice influence in that kind of leadership position. But it does mean that I get to work for lots of different businesses, and I've been able to work for, as you said, Pirelli, John West, Danone, Fresenius, Daniel Thwaite, so hospitality, tyres, tuna, you name it, I've probably worked in it.
Excellent. And so talk to me, Jo, a little bit more about some of that. I know you talk a lot about some of the changes that have happened within the various organisations. I know that you don't like to stand still for too long. And I know that you've always kind of put people and inclusivity at the heart of many of the strategies that you've rolled out or been instrumental in rolling out at the various different businesses. Talk to me about why that is important, and I guess why it has been so important to you over the various different positions, and how perhaps businesses can actually start to affect that change themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I am incredibly passionate about helping businesses create environments which are inclusive. And to me, if you have an inclusive environment, it becomes naturally diverse, because it becomes not about type of person, but about the value that person can bring, and the difference that those people collectively can make to that organisation. And I guess I don't know, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you kind of, I grew up in lots of environments where often I was the only female, sitting at the boardroom table. And that's all right. I'm not kind of crying about that. That's fine. It gave me a lot of great experiences. But I also, you start asking yourself at a young age, I wonder what we could do if there were individuals around this table that better represented either the workforce or the environment or the customer base. And I kind of set about trying to understand, I guess, Leila, what is it? What is it about organisations that stops them from being completely diverse and inclusive? Because I don't believe anybody sets out to do that, not at all. And in fact, I've worked for amazing businesses and they're still not getting this kind of stuff right. So I kind of understood very early in my senior leadership career, that part of it was to try and understand what made the business tick. Mm-hmm. So a kind of outside in perspective. So what were the issues for the business? What was stopping the business from being diverse? I look at it and I say, okay, let's take a problem. Let's have a look at talent pipeline as an example. Mm-hmm. I think I hear a lot of people say, well, we pick the best person. We pick the right person for the role. And my retort is, well, if you're picking from a group of very similar people, how do you know it's the best person? How could you possibly know? How could any of us know? So instead of kind of sitting there and thinking, oh, well, it is as it is, I guess we can't change it. I thought, well, I don't know. I think I probably can change it, or I can help the business to change it. And so it's then starting to unpick and unravel and get to the heart of what are what's the undercurrent of the culture, And you do that through how people talk to each other, the kind of things that we base our performance reviews on, our policies, our procedures, and you start to unpick those and actually get to a point where the HR people strategy is starting to, over a period of 2 to 3 years, because it's not fast, some of these changes are not fast, actually you're moving over that period of time, and you're I suppose you're challenging at every point, you're challenging those subconscious biases, you're challenging those biases that are built into the fabric of the organizations. And they're not purposeful biases. People are not waking up in the morning saying, I'm not going to make the right choice, I'm not going to make the best choice. It just happens until somebody says, well, hang on a second, I wonder if we did it this way, would we get a different outcome? And what actually trying, if we take recruitment as the example, or talent pipeline, what are we actually basing that decision on? What does talent mean to us? And if it means, I don't know, talent is somebody who's been to a certain university, for example, or they might have a first degree. Well, do we need that for that role? Because suddenly, do we need somebody to have made 3 moves internationally in order to be a CEO? What else can we challenge those things that we, people say, well, yeah, obviously they must have done that. Otherwise they can't get to that position. So I think everybody at every level, and in particular when you're at a senior leadership level, can challenge those and say, just stop, let's think about what we're actually trying to measure and monitor here. And do it that way. So yeah, I just, I'm like the sand between the toes, keep going until someone says, oh, right, okay, let's look at it.
Mm-hmm. No, do you know what? That makes absolute sense to me. And first of all, picking up on one of the pieces you said there, I completely concur. I don't think that people set out to be uninclusive. I don't think they set out and think, hey, I'm going to go into work today and I'm going to be uninclusive. I think it is just the fact that we need to, as you say, really draw a line in the sand and say, okay, what are the key strategic pillars? Whether it is we look at the talent and this is why, and then we look at this methodology for how we're going about employee engagement or whatever it is, and actually picking out each of those strategies and looking under the surface as to why we perhaps need to be doing something slightly different. Because at the end of the day, they're not always huge changes. Actually, it is just saying, well, do we need someone who has that specific type of degree in order to go into, or what type of other skills are similar or could be corresponding to what we require? Do we always need to be so black and white and specific about it? Because we could be opening up the talent pool massively if we just look outside of these kind of narrow initial points almost.
Yeah, I mean, I have a favourite question with all the teams that I lead, and one which I ask myself is, right, stop. What is the question we're trying to answer? Because if we can work that out, then actually the solutions are fairly clear. But until we're able to stop and ask ourselves that question and interrupt our own thinking, then actually we'll just keep doing it. Well, we'll just keep doing it. It's done. Businesses will just keep in that revolving door. For all sorts of good reasons. All the businesses I've worked for, very successful businesses, very successful. Kind of, the question I ask is, well, how much more successful could we be if we just did things differently?
Absolutely. And from your experience, Jo, which other strategies have you seen work particularly well? Because you brought up talent there, which I think is absolutely at the heart of moving the needle when it comes to diversity and inclusion, so that we obviously don't end up with groupthink and we're incorporating other types of minds and mindset into say the boardroom. But what other key strategies have you found perhaps have worked the most that you've seen in the various different businesses that those tuning in today could be taking heed of or taking back to their organisation?
Every business I've worked in, it always requires revamping or even implementing leadership and management development. In terms of a key enabler of strategy, because actually you can't do all of this stuff by yourself, and nor should you want to. And when I'm talking about leadership and management development, I'm not just talking about sending everyone on a course. They're going to go on this 2-week course and then they're going to be amazing. I'm talking about building the skills that that particular business needs. And in order for that to happen, you have to get out of your seat and go and talk to people, and go out on the road if you've got salespeople, and go into team meetings. Look at all the people data that you've got, because there is loads of people data knocking about businesses that gets ignored, and really figure out what is it that we need to do in order to drive the skill set for this particular business, and then create something. I think, you don't rely too much on off-the-shelf packages to something. I think you can enhance it, but genuinely, I think where I've had the most successes is where we've built from the ground up and we've asked individuals. I think the other part, so that's one part of it for sure. The other part is really to understand, do the values of the organisation really reflect the culture, both current and desired? And that, that's something that people talk a lot these days. Lately, actually, culture is quite a buzzword. And it is at the minute. You can't go anywhere. Everyone's talking about culture, but I think culture's always been important. It's never gone away. I think we're just understanding a little bit more now and how we can get into the heart of what culture means. And I also think we've stopped being afraid of asking people what they think. For a long time, certainly in my early days, we didn't ask because we were afraid of the answer. And I think more so now, and definitely in the businesses I've worked in, I think it's so powerful because, look, honestly, what do we know? Vast majority of the time, the people who are doing the jobs, they understand. They'll tell you, yeah, look, we've got these set of values. We either live by them or we don't. And then if we don't and we want to, then it's just a gap analysis.
Absolutely. And it's being transparent.
Yeah. And it's doing something. If you're going to ask, you're going to have to do something with it. A bit of practicing what you preach, I think is the name of the game. I mean, I'm a mother of 2 fine, upstanding, feisty daughters. I definitely, I practice what I preach. If I need to go and pick my children up from school, I do. I don't ask permission and I don't say sorry. And I don't expect my teams to either.
I love that. And I think it's so important for leaders who are visible, like yourself, who are at the helm of the organizations, to actually be human about it, which is clearly what you are being there. Is, look, I'm only human. I need to be able to pick up my kids. I know that you jet set around various different countries, and also, are running after the girls as well. That is normal. None of us can be perfect, can we? And I think the more that people see and experience you, doing these kind of things, the more that actually it normalizes, for everyone else in the organisation, that it's okay to be needing to escape a bit early or to.
Well, I think it's also this concept of it's the world of work is fluid, isn't it? Now there isn't a set start and finish to it. Our days are elongated. We've all got mobiles. We're all contactable all the time, unfortunately. And I think having environments where we base our strategy on the value that that individual, either individually or collectively as part of a team, can bring to the overall success of the organisation, and we build everything around that. We build all of our capability, we build all of our mechanisms around checking performance on that truth, then all of a sudden all of the other stuff doesn't matter. Because then it doesn't matter if I'm going at 5 to 5. Who cares?
Exactly.
We're getting what we need. I think one of the strong areas, and some businesses really don't pay too much attention, is understanding the skills, the physical skills, the actual skills, both what we do and how we do it, of functions and of individuals in functions, and having that accessible for everybody. So, definitely, most businesses have competency frameworks, but actually probably as many don't. If we think 50% I've worked in do and 50% don't. And it's so important, because if you start with that great bedrock, that great basis of saying, these are the skills that I would like, the business would like from you, then it means that anybody can access those. It's not secret. It's not, I'm not liked, or I'm a bit different, or I say things differently, or I look different, or whatever it is. It doesn't, none of that matters, because it's about the skill.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's about being transparent about that. And it is an equal playing field to that point. And the way you describe it there is just being at the bedrock and kind of really making sure that that is at the heart of everything really does, I think, make a difference, because it's the same across the entire board, up and down the organisation.
Yeah.
And just before we kind of wrap up for today, because I know I could chat to you for forever and a day, actually, Joan. I'm realising the time, and I've got a whole number of other questions that I wanted to ask. So I'm just going to whip into a quick kind of lightning round here and ask you a couple of other questions, if that is okay. We've talked obviously a lot about diversity and inclusion, but what does diverse and inclusive leadership actually mean to you in summary?
It means valuing somebody on the basis of the skills that they give and the behaviours that they exhibit, and on absolutely nothing else. And also appreciating that everyone has a life. We are whole people, and as leaders, we should practice whole leadership. And also sometimes doing all the time, actually, doing the right thing, not the easy thing, Leila.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know that you love your quotes. Have you got any kind of favourite quotes or books that you're reading at the moment?
Yeah, I think one of them I've already used, which is, what's the question we're trying to answer? And any of my teams that reported into me will be absolutely laughing at this point now. It's always my mantra. That is one of my favourite quotes, actually. And I really do love the quote from, I think it was Ford, who said, if I'd have asked my customers what they wanted, they'd have said a faster horse. And I use that because I say, sometimes people don't know what they want and you just have to show them. I've got rafts. Anybody wants any quotes, come to me. I'm like the queen of quotes. In terms of books, I read all of the time. I think it's so important to expand our thinking and to welcome other views in. I read an amazing book, and I think I told you about it as well, Leila, called Invisible Women by Criado-Perez. Anybody who's interested in diversity and inclusion, and actually some of the undercurrents of biases that run through our into our cultures, read it. It's phenomenally good. Triggers by Goldsmith is a great one. I read that a long time ago. Black Box Thinking by Syed, where it talks about actually this concept of continuous improvement and actually just focusing on the small things that you can do. Because sometimes I think we get caught up, don't we? And we've got to, this problem is so big we can't handle, we can't face it. But actually sometimes just break it down into sizable chunks. I've got a whole list. I'm like a library of books.
You are. Every time I speak to you, you're reading something else. I'm kind of jotting them down. But I know you also mentioned, when did you, I think you're reading this, last time I spoke to you, the Chimp Paradox, which I also
Paradox. I've read it 3 times.
Oh, it's just brilliant, isn't it? Just brilliant.
Yeah, I've read it twice and I've listened to it once. It's a very interesting book. I think that and Mindset by Carol Dweck, that those two in conjunction are really, really quite fascinating. I think it changed, certainly at the time I read it changed my outlook on certain things. And I think it's really important to challenge our own self-beliefs. I think change is easy until it comes to ourselves.
Very easy in practice, and then much harder to implement when you're feeling those things yourself personally. Definitely. And final quick question: Oh, final two quick questions, actually. Who's inspired you most throughout your career and life?
Throughout my life, I would probably say my dad. He was a wise old man. And I say old, he was quite old when I came along. So he was a wise geezer. And he said lots of things to me, actually, which only now, I think, probably in later life are starting to ring true. You know, things, live and let live was his great motto. And I absolutely have that stamped through everything, you know, and I think it's really helpful. I'm trying to pass that on to my girls. And probably in more later times, my family and definitely my girls, you know, they remind me every day to enjoy life, you know, because as children, they really enjoy life and they don't see difference, which I think is wonderful. And it teaches me, you know, they challenge difference everywhere, and I think it teaches you, be quite humbling, I think, to be around this generation coming through. Definitely, I'm learning a lot. They run rings around me, Leila.
Oh, bless them. Well, they take after their mum, clearly.
Oh, yeah.
And dad.
Let's hope not.
And last question, I promise, before we summarise for today. But is there any advice or wisdom that you can leave us with, or any advice that you might perhaps have given your younger childhood self, Jo, if you were to go back and be able to speak to her?
Yeah, probably two things, I guess. The first would be a mentor of mine once talked about a sort of too difficult box, if you like. That's something that we carry around with us, that the things that are too hard for us, we shove in there and then we don't deal with them. And actually to empty that a bit more regularly. When you're into my younger self, I would say empty it slightly more regularly than you did. And the other one, which I think is a really important one, is don't be afraid to be different. Different's good. Different's good. And have the courage of your convictions. You know, sometimes we lack trust in our own intuition and we shouldn't. And that's definitely what I would say. And probably be a bit bolder, if that's at all possible. Be bolder, younger.
Well, you're certainly super bold. So I think that would be great advice to give to your younger self. And I love that about the too hard box. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, well, I can't say it was mine. I had a mentor, an excellent mentor in my 20s. And he said to me, you know, look, this is in your too difficult box. And I was like, what are you talking about? But anyway, I carry that with me as a kind of view now. And I'll kind of get out this too difficult box and I'll think about all the things that are weighing me down, that are impacting potentially my performance or impacting my mood or impacting others. And I will regularly ask my team, am I in your too difficult box today? Because if I, let me know, we'll talk about it.
That's so interesting. Sorry, I'm asking one last question, I promise. And when one has things which are too difficult in their too difficult box or a too hard box, what do we do with them? Is it just a case of talking about them so that we can unload some of the things outside of our too hard box, or what do we do?
I think you've got to ask yourself. I think it depends what's in there. And often what's in there is the stuff that we find hard, isn't it? You know, having a conversation with someone. If we are someone who doesn't necessarily like confrontation, actually anything which feels confrontational we'll put in there, we won't deal with. It can be an interaction, it can be a piece of work. And you can train yourself, I guess, which I have, to get them out, literally, get them down on paper and then say, okay, what am I going to do with this now? And equally, am I worrying about it when I don't need to? And I'm quite lucky in my life. I have lots of people that I can share these things with. And sometimes you just need to sound it out. And then it's not, you know, it's not so bad. The hardest bit is figuring out if you're in anyone else's too difficult box. Which I have been over the years. So.
I'm sure. I'm laughing because I'm thinking the exact same thing. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how many have I been in over the years? But thank you ever so much, Jo. That's just a fantastic note to end things on, and lots of points for learning there, and actually some really tangible, great advice, which I've been scribbling down here. And as per usual, we'll do my quick summary and say thank you very, very much indeed for being here with us today. But some of the key pieces that I took away were, firstly, what's the question that we are trying to solve? I mean, it's a great, very simple quote, and actually something which is very, very powerful that I think anyone that's listening in today can be taking back to their teams, or perhaps be saying it themselves, to simplify. Also, that it's really important to make sure that values reflect culture. I know that you mentioned that the culture is a bit of a buzzword these days. What does that actually mean? How do our values reflect that? And how can we be trying to do something which is genuinely different and genuinely challenging? It's good, as you previously said, you always say this actually, is to make change happen for the positive. Having something different and making sure that we're changing constantly is a good thing. Doesn't mean that we've got it wrong. It means that we are constantly evolving. And I think, as with anything, with culture, with diversity and inclusion and belonging, it's a living, breathing, sleeping thing. And so it's going to be evolving. It's going to be changing constantly. It's like growing up. And so I really took that away from our conversation. And finally, live and let live, and practicing what you preach. Brilliant mantra, I think, for anyone to take away with. So what I would say is, for anyone who's been listening in today, been listening to the fantastic Joanne Carlin. I'm very used to calling her Jo. It's Joanne Carlin. Jo or Joanne Carlin. You can check out Jo on LinkedIn, or you can check out our show notes actually, which will be all in on the website at the end of today's session on www.dialglobal.org/podcast or www.leilamckenzie.com/podcast. And I'll put all the book details in there as well. As you can hear today, Jo is like a walking human library, and so I'll make sure that all of those are down there today. So thank you very much, Jo, again. It's been great to have you here. My name's Leila. Oh, sorry. Thanks so much, Jo. And my name's Leila Mackenzie-Dellis. You've been listening to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders. We're with you every week, and we'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.